I hope that you enjoy our videos, and please press like. It'll help us a lot. If you want a copy of my book, The Speculator's Mosaic, you can find that on Amazon. As I said, when my natural father died in Baltimore, my mother moved out to San Francisco Bay Area, and she met the then mayor of Mill Valley, California, which is 20 miles north across the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco in Marin County. And as I mentioned, he had an investment firm, and so I started with that situation. And as I got into the market during my teen years, my older brother went to a private school, which had a very good reputation, and I had enough incentive or achievement or orientation to say, well, I want to get the best education I can get, and so I wanted to go to the school as Thatcher in Ojai, California, pretty close to Santa Barbara. And so I was 4 years at Thatcher, and I think by the end of the time there, I was on the varsity tennis team. I think I was number 4 playing tennis, which is my favorite sport. And so after that, then I went to college, and I went to Stanford. And I have to say that at this time, I started at Stanford in 1961. The fact that I was at Thatcher was a huge advantage on getting into Stanford, because the admissions people at Stanford had long connections with Thatcher. And I think the size of my class at Thatcher was something like 20, and 4 or 5 of us went to Stanford the same year. I mean, to do that today would be essentially impossible, with all the percentage of people that want to go to Stanford that get in is very, very tiny. And my guess is that the ability of schools like Thatcher to work well with the admissions is no longer nearly as prevalent. So anyway, I went to Stanford, and I should probably mention, along with my gambling instinct, one of the other main theme of to understand who I am, you can probably see it if we were to turn the camera to all the books that I have, and that is a love of history. And so I majored in history at Stanford, and already had been reading a lot about history, including history of business. And that was to have a great importance to me later on when I got into another game, which is startup venture capital, on what books that talked about business history did I find was useful in deciding what to invest in. And the answer to that question, in terms of specific books, is the great American, well, originally Scottish entrepreneur, Andrew Carnegie, a book by Wall on Andrew Carnegie. One of the lessons I learned from that book was that he was involved in marketing of the steel. And this would be in the 1860s, just a little after the Civil War. And he'd been working on the railroad, the Pennsylvania Railroad, and had contact with the CEO of the Pennsylvania Railroad. So they were building a new steel mill, which really took all of Carnegie's money to get done. And the question was, okay, how are we going to market the steel, mostly to the railroad industry? And so he sends the head of the Pennsylvania Railroad a letter. And he said, we just had a meeting of our, a team on our new steel mill, and we couldn't figure out, what are we going to call it? And someone said, let's call it Edgar Thomson. And so, Mr. Thompson, we're asking if we were to call our steel mill after your name, if that would be all right. Well, after about a week or two, back comes a letter from Edgar Thomson, the CEO of the Pennsylvania Railroad, and he said, well, your choice of names I am all right with your choice of names. So now the salesmen are going into Pennsylvania Railroad and saying, hey, we've got another 1,000 tons of steel rails that we've just produced at the Edgar Thomson plant. So there's an example of the importance of names, and also the importance of marketing involved in startups. I kind of have 2 rules of business. Then when asked, I will say, okay, the first rule of business is you can never overemphasize the importance of marketing. Rule number 2, if you have any questions about business, consult rule number 1.